Alright guys, so we're here at the Warlord Games Open Day for their 10th anniversary, and we're here with the legendary Rick Priestley. Nice to meet you, sir. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Ben.
Indeed.
Good to be here.
Yeah, and so I wanted to have a little bit of a chat about sort of what you've got planned and sort of what you've enjoyed about developing Beyond the Gates of Antares with Warlord Games. You could sort of give us like a little bit of a whirl and a highlight reel of how it's all been coming together for you.
Well, it's taken a good while actually, so I have to cast my memory back. I mean, when we started the Antares project, it was really along the lines of, wouldn't it be nice to do a science fiction game, a new science fiction game? Because obviously, having spent 28 years at Games Workshop, there's no opportunity to design a new one. I got one chance, and that was it. So I thought, well, if I'm going to design another one, then this would be a good time to do it. And the Warlord guys, they very kindly, in fact, enthusiastically said they'd be delighted to. And then I designed it, and then they thought, oh, yeah, of course, there's an awful lot of this going on. I think it was a bigger game than they anticipated, and a lot more work than they expected. Whether that tells you something about the amount of work or their expectations, I couldn't say. But it's taken them a good 2 years to get around to bulking out the armies. So from the armies in the original rubble, we've progressed not as fast as I would have hoped, but we got there in the end. So a bit of a roller coaster really, but it's okay. And we've actually, along the way, we've had to take on, well, in fact, 2 new sculptors, one of whom's gone on and now works for something else. But we've just recently taken on a new 3D sculptor who is really excellent visualizer, and I'm very pleased to say that that's moved some of the conceptual stuff on. Because Rams, if you've got something that, because I'm a games designer, I don't tell people what things look like, a trivial detail. You really need to work with other creative artists, and I don't think Warlord had that creative base. You know, they never really had. They still don't employ an artist, for example. They buy in all of their artwork. So it's a little bit of a steep learning curve. Yeah, but as I say, we got there in the end. Hooray!
It's been an impressive growth then for Gates of Antares over this past year in the community. Like, everybody has really gone hardcore into it. You know, you've got lots of Facebook groups online and things that are really going for it, and sort of designing things, coming up with interesting ideas for the characters and the troops and stuff as well. So
I think people who've bought into it quite big, because it's deliberately designed to be open, and so if other people want to contribute, they can contribute, and that's it's sort of like, it's one of the ways I've always designed games, really. Even the original 40, I know it's hard to believe, but in the original 40k, that was the concept. It's just that the original 40k became a different thing very quickly, and all sorts of commercial imperatives imposed themselves, and my own responsibilities evolved into something else. So this was like getting back to it, really. It's like the old days. Yes.
Well, looking forward, what are you sort of interested in developing next when it comes to Beyond the Gates of Antares? Like, what's the next step for you guys in terms of maybe the story and the narrative, or the models and the factions?
Yeah, well, there's an ongoing narrative based on the idea of the Xylos campaign, whereby part of the Nexus, which is the connective network by which all of the planets in the Antarian universe are connected. So if you don't know it, you think of it as a bit Stargatey. It's not literally that, but it's got that kind of dynamic. So what's happening is that the various gates which connect places together are either collapsing or rebuilding, or new ones are coming through. And it's a sort of period of anarchy and uncertainty which has been caused by the events that happened in the Xylos campaign. And so subsequently, we've had a further campaign on a planet which appeared to be collapsing, called the Crisis campaign. And we're going to use that as the story, sort of springboard for new events and new things happening. I think the thing I'm looking forward to most is getting the alien race that I conceived of when we started Antares, but we didn't have the resources to make it. Refer back to what I was saying about Warlord being a bit surprised. But we've actually done it now. We've actually designed the models and got the basics of the plastic kit done. And the race are called the Vol, and they're a bit like a kind of wrong way around Scorpion, with a slightly ebullient personality. So they're quite an unusual sort of concept.
They must have been quite fun to come up with as a race, I guess.
Yeah, they are quite fun. It's the fact that they're so inhuman looking, but so kind of hail fellow, well met. Slap you on the back and that sort of thing. Yeah. So I always say, think of it as Brian Blessed in a giant scorpion suit.
That sounds pretty awesome to me, I'm pretty sure. And so one of the other things I noticed you've been showing off here today as well is fantasy sort of take on the sort of basis and the mechanics of the Antares system. Yeah. So could you talk us a little bit through that and sort of tell us sort of what your plans are for it?
Yeah, that just really started off as a little bit of a break because I've been working on Antares for quite a long time. It's been out for 2 years, and it took me about 2 years development before that. So really, I've been eating, sleeping and breathing it for 4 years. So I just thought it'd be nice to just do something that had a little bit of a different feel. But I was so steeped in that Antares game system that I thought, well, how about just having a few games of fantasy? Just me and a few friends. How about a game of, wait a minute, I've got some old Warhammer figures here. Where's me goblins? And we just thought, let's just play a game. What should we use? Well, let's just use Antares. We've been playing that. And it started like that, and I just thought, well, I've got the manuscript for Antares because I wrote the core manuscript, so why don't I just, tinker with that, see what we can come up with by way of a game. And I initially thought, well, I won't change anything. I'll leave it as Antares. That way we won't get confused. I'll repeat that. I won't get confused. And it'll be just Antares, but I'll put in some new rules for magic. I'll have to do rules for chariots, and I'll have to do rules for monsters, and I'll have to do rules for a few other things that you can only get in a fantasy war game. And that's kind of what I did. And then we played, and we thought, well, this works really well, apart from this bit and this bit and this bit, which are really designed for a game of manoeuvre and position, because that's what Antares is. It's a World War II style game. It's in space, but it's a game of take position, you take cover, move to a position, because the range weapons are so powerful. Well, a fantasy game isn't like that. The range weapons aren't powerful. It's all about getting into combat and hitting people quite hard. So a lot of the rules didn't quite work. The reaction system didn't quite work. So I just thought, well, let's just ditch that for now and get back to it later. So there are a few things that changed along the way. And one of the things I changed right from the start was in Antares you have rules for probes, which are independent units which go all over the place and which split up. The models that comprise the unit can split up and go all over. Well, you don't have those in a fantasy environment, so I just cut out a whole swathe of rules to do with them. That shortened the document quite a bit, I can tell you. So that's kind of it, really. And it was fine. I've done army lists for all of the core things that me and my mates happen to have, which is mostly everything. And now and again, somebody will turn up and go, "Oh, can I play with my halflings?" I go, "Oh, certainly can, my friend."
That was one of the things I was actually going to ask you, is that obviously Antares features a lot of very interesting and unique looking species and factions. Yeah. I'm guessing this sort of fantasy game is going to follow a lot of the standard sort of templates for them, so humans, elves and stuff?
Game for the models we had, and for the models we might want to collect from the current ranges. So the demo game I'm doing at the moment is we're using the North Star miniatures that Nick Eyre has produced in coordination with Osprey, which are really designed for the Frostgrave game. But they are classic. I would say they were classic. I hesitate to say D&D, but the gnolls are classic gnolls.
I get what you mean.
Anyone who's familiar with the D&D concept will know what they're like. And the dwarfs are very much Tolkien-esque. Yes. And I don't mean the film. I mean the book.
You mean the actual the books and stuff
itself? Yeah. Which, if you're as decrepit as I am, is the thing is, if you're of an age, then the visual image you'll have of Tolkien won't necessarily be Peter Jackson. It'll be of the books. And I always think of the Tolkien universe in the Middle Earth as being very firmly rooted in the Dark Ages, later Dark Ages, really.
He was a Dark Age scholar, wasn't he?
So. Yeah, he was the professor of Anglo-Saxon, wasn't he? And to me, that's what that world evokes, and that's what these models look like, which is great. I like that, but they could equally well be Games Workshop dwarfs. I've written a game system. I've not defined a world.
Yeah, so basically, anybody that's got any of these sort of models lying around in their bedrooms or whatever can just crack out whatever they want and sort of get stuck into a fantasy game. Then,
That's kind of that's what I did it for. And also, Warlord games don't do fantasy figures, so I don't feel there's no commercial imperative to make something fit in with Warlord. And Warlord have said they're not really interested in producing the game, so because they don't do fancy figures. So I'll have to find another way of producing it, even if I have to do it myself. Who knows? But then, of course, you have this thing where which you don't have if you're doing a commercial game. You have this thing where you go, well, what do we illustrate it with?
Yeah. Cool. So, do we have sort of? Obviously, you say you're working on it at the moment now, and playtesting and all these kind of things. Do you have a time frame of when you might like to see this hit the tabletop at the moment?
No, I don't have any time frame at all. I don't see the need to have one. And chances are some other game will come along. And I know that Osprey are currently working on a new version of a battle game which sounds very Warhammer-esque.
Oathmark, I believe, is the one.
Yeah, Oathmark. Yeah, which Joe's doing, isn't he? They were very successful with Frostgrave, and deservedly so. Did very well with that. And I'm sure they'll do well with their Oathmark game. There's a lot of
there's a lot of space for lots of different systems for people to use their different models with now, I suppose, actually, which is a big thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and all I've done really is, as a hobbyist, taken a game system which I happen to have written, so it's fairly familiar with it, and just converted it over into fantasy. Well, I've had a good game today, and the guys who played are both Antares players, so they're familiar with the basics, but they were quite it was interesting to see them get to grips with the dynamic of the game, because the dynamic changes totally. Even though the game system's the same, there are a few little tweaks, but the game isn't the same game. It was really interesting. Yeah, well, I thought it was interesting. I'm a games designer.
we shall see, I suppose. So there you go, guys. That's a little bit of a chat there with Rick about what he's planning for Beyond the Gates of Antares and what he's enjoyed, and obviously this fantasy game as well that's coming together too. So
Fantares.
Fantares.
Fancy Antares, isn't it? Oh, yeah, Fantares.
Maybe we can get them in the comments to sort of suggest some names for it. That'd be quite interesting.
My original name for the game was Beyond the Pillars of Hercules, in a parallel to Beyond the Gates of Antares, because I was intending it to be Greek mythology. I was going to base it around Greek mythology. But of course, no one had any Greek mythology armies apart from Nigel Stillman, who has Amazons aplenty. So in the end, it ended up with everything, so it just became Fantares. Yeah.
Well, there you go, guys. Fantares coming soon-ish. We'll catch you guys in the next video. Hope you're enjoying everything we've got here in the live blog today, and we'll see you again soon.